Thank you. Is there somebody at the door?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, when you guys grab that, please. So, when I graduated from college, how much does it say that I was in debt?
$62,000.
Okay, $62,130. Ma'am, grab that paper, please, and you'll need a calculator. And you can just sit right there because I got to stay kind of close to my computer. Okay, now, I wish that I could say that that $62,130 was tuition money. Okay, because it wasn't. And here's why I say bad financial decisions. Is because if that money had just been tuition, you know what? I mean, that's kind of understandable, right? Had to pay for college somehow. Here's why I'm a bigger dummy, though. My tuition was already paid for. My room and board was already paid for. I, however, didn't want to have to work a lot because my sorority sisters didn't have to work. So I didn't really want to either. And I still wanted clothes, and I still wanted to go out to eat dinner and all of that stuff without having to work a lot. Just the sorority alone was like thousands of dollars, okay? So I wanted to live the good life, but I didn't necessarily want to work for it as much because I was a dumb kid. I was a very dumb kid. Like, you all are going to get to learn from my mistake. So that $61,000 isn't even like tuition. That went towards parties and dinners out and me buying a car because I wanted to buy a nicer car than I could afford. So where did I get that $62,000 to spend in the first place? A student loan. Because what it feels like when you're like 18, 19, or in my case, I was actually 17 when I got my first loan because I graduated from high school early. I was like, man, this is like money in the bank that they're just handing me. Like, and I didn't think about, even though I'm not stupid, smart people do dumb things. Okay, statistically speaking, over half of you guys are going to be in the same boat as me. So that's why today I wanted to take this opportunity to try to maybe at least put this in your brain so that later on in the future, maybe you're not working a second job like I am, you know, when you get to be my age because you're paying off these bills. Okay, you can actually like enjoy yourself a little more. So there's a formula that they use. So does the bank just give me the money out of the goodness of their heart?
No.
Nope. What do they get in exchange for giving me that $62,000? They got interest. Thank you. Yes. They charge me interest, which means basically that they say, all right, we'll give you that money, but you're going to have to pay us back more than that. Okay, there are two main types of interest. One is called simple interest, okay, which is more of like a flat fee kind of thing. It's an easier kind of interest. We're not doing that one today. Okay, the one we're doing is the more complicated one that is called compound interest. And what compound interest means is it basically means they take what you owe, they add money, they add interest to it, and then over time you get charged even more interest on that interest. So what do you think happens to how much you owe pretty quick? It goes up really fast. Okay? It goes up really fast. So this is the formula that banks actually use to figure out, I borrowed $62,000. How much am I going to have to pay them at the end?
Double.
When I get done? Well, you know what? That's a pretty good guess. So this is where you guys have a sheet. We're going to walk through my personal situation together so you have a model so that you can do it yourself so that you've got something to go by. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is A, that I want you to fill in. A stands for the amount you'll have to pay back. It would help if I could type, wouldn't it? So everybody should be writing the A in the formula. Okay, I borrowed $62,130. Obviously, I'm going to have to pay back more than that. So that A literally represents, when all is said and done at the end, how much am I going to have to pay that bank back? Okay? Well, we're gonna do the math and figure that out in a minute, but it's definitely more than what I borrowed. P stands for the word principal. Okay, and in real terms, it basically just means how much did I borrow? So how much I borrowed in the first place is your principal. R stands for the rate that they're going to charge me interest. You ever heard like, yeah, I'll loan you the money, but I'm going to charge you like 10% interest. So they literally take a percent of what I borrow, and then that's how much extra they charge me. N stands for the number of times a year it compounds. And let me explain to you what compounds means. So I said compound interest means they like keep adding interest and keep adding interest and keep adding interest, right? Over and over and over again. So how many times in a year they add the interest? We're going to get to that in a second. And time represents how many years I have to pay it back. So now let's put some numbers with all this. So there's my formula that I have up here. I told you what all those letters stand for. Now we're going to fill in the blanks with my particular situation so that you can see, eek, like I'm a nice person for a lot of reasons, but you don't want to be me when it comes to this. And let's find out why. Okay, so first of all, I don't know the amount I have to pay back yet. That's what we're trying to figure out. So I'm going to put my principal, okay, my amount that I borrowed right here. So how much, what am I putting next to P? How much did I borrow? $62,130, right? So I'm going to replace this blank, and this is where I want you guys to write. So $62,130. That is how much I borrowed. So in place of the P in the formula, P, the amount I borrowed, is $62,130. So I'm going to replace it for P in the formula right there. Okay? The parentheses and the 1 is just part of the formula. Okay, now the R stands for interest rate, like how much interest I'm going to pay. You guys are at least a little bit fortunate that these days college is more expensive, but the rate that they charge you is a little bit lower than normal. I, however, had to pay 7%. So right here next to interest, I'm going to type 7%. But when I type it into the formula, it's got to be a decimal. Who's going to think back to 7th grade? How do I turn 7% into a decimal? Divided by 100. So what will it be as a decimal? 0.07, right. So I'm going to fill in my blank right here. So this R in the formula is now going to become a 0.07. Okay, underneath the rate in the formula is the N, right? The number of times that it compounds. You would think, since the government gave me this student loan, that they'd be nice and maybe only add a little bit of interest every once in a while. That's not how it works. They literally do what's called compounding daily. That means every freaking day, a guy sitting at the bank adds interest to how much I owe them. Okay, so daily. How many days are there in a year? 365. So right here next to N, my N is going to become 365. That means every day that guy at the bank is going to add interest. So N is how many times in a year. It's called compounding. Basically just means how many are they going to add interest every day. Because that's how they get more money. Frankly, like it's it's a scam, y'all. It's a real scam. Okay, over here to the right, this little exponent piece that we have right here is N. Okay, we already know the N is how many times they compound, the number of times. So in this blank right here, I'm going to put a 365 in that little exponent. Oh, let me make this a little smaller. And what does it mean that the N and the T in the formula are sitting next to each other? It means you multiply. So I'm going to do the number of times it compounds, which I've already put 365, and I'm going to multiply it by T. Now, what does T mean? The amount of years to pay back. Most student loans are 10 years, and that's what mine was. So our T is going to be 10. So I'm going to multiply 365 times 10 in a second, and that's how I'm going to get my exponent. Who's ready to be really depressed when they find out how much it costs me to borrow this money? Okay, the good news is you can get a calculator. And by the way, how come I'm showing you? Because you know what, if you Google, student loan, I don't know what you're talking about. If you Google student loan interest calculator, it'll plug it in for you. How come you need to know how to do it yourself?
Because when you borrow money,
Yeah, people be shady, guys. If you don't know how to do it yourself, you're just going to have to depend on somebody else. Do you want to trust somebody else with your money? No. Okay, there's a bunch of people that are living in apartments when they used to live in their own homes right now because they believed a shady mortgage guy who said that their mortgage was going to cost this much, and it turned out it was going to cost more, and the bank took it away from them because they didn't know how to do the math themselves. And as you'll see, it's really not that hard. Okay, so you need to know so that you can protect yourself and not have to depend on somebody else to do this for you. So everybody grab a calculator. Easy peasy. We're just going to put it in there. Now we got to pay attention to order of operations, which is the only thing. So if I'm looking, I got a lot of numbers in there, right? What out of all those numbers am I going to do first? What's in the parentheses. That is exactly what I'm going to do first. So this piece right here that's in the parentheses, that's what I'm going to put into my calculator first. So I'm literally going to type in my calculator, I'm going to type 1 plus, what does that little fraction bar mean? Divide, right? So 1 plus 0.07 divided by 365. So 1 plus 0.07 divided by 365. Not a big number yet. 1 point something. So I'll show you again. So I just did 1 plus 0.07 divided by 365. So I just did the part that's in the parentheses, and I hit enter. Make sure you hit enter. Always hit enter in between each step, okay? So now what's my next thing that I need to do? Please excuse in Aunt Sally. What's E stand for? The exponent. So the next thing I need to do is the exponent. So this piece right here, the 365 times 10. What is 365 times 10? 3,650. You just add the 0, right, to the 365. Okay, so I'm going to hit, this is the button right there that you used to raise something to the exponent. If you've got an old calculator, it might not make it look like an exponent. It may just look like this little arrow. So see where I hit answer and then arrow, okay? Yours might not look like an exponent if you have an older one, but as long as the arrow's there, it means you're still doing the exponent. And we're going to raise it to the 3,650th power. And then we're going to hit enter again. Still nothing crazy. 2. Okay, now what's my last step? What does it mean that this 62,130 is just sitting here next to it? That means multiply. So now I'm going to take my answer I already have, and I'm going to multiply it by $62,130. Dun, 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 dun. I had to pay back $125,000.
Whoa.
Over $125,000. I like my friends and my CDs and my clothes that I had in college, but I didn't like it that much. You have to pay it all back. Do you know what happens if you don't pay your student loan back? They garnish your paycheck when you get to be older.
What is that? What if
If you die, actually, if you die, that's the one time it goes away. But you have to die. Like
if you don't want to pay it back,
What does garnish mean?
Garnish means that they go to my employer, like they would go to JCPS, and they would say, hey, Liz Popelka Brown hasn't paid her student loan, and JCPS would actually take part of my paycheck every month and give it to the government to pay off my loan. Yeah, they do not play. Okay, so we're going to write this, $125,106, and we're going to round it to the nearest, so 6 cents. Now, obviously, I spent that original $62,000, right? Like, I had myself a good time with that. So let's figure out just what the interest was that I had to pay. So take that $125,000 and subtract what I borrowed, the $62,000. Baby, I'll help you with individual stuff in 1 second. So how much interest did I actually pay? $62,000. So I paid more in interest than I borrowed in the first place. Like, it cost me more to have a good time with that $60,000 than it did to actually, like, have the good time in the first place. That's where compound interest is going to get you. Okay? So what's the moral of this story?
Don't get
If you don't absolutely need it, don't borrow it, because Lord have mercy, you're going to be paying a lot. Now I'm going to walk you through one more example to show you how really depressing this is. Okay, so what if? Because I recently just paid off my loans, So I recently just got done paying off that $125,000. So $63,000 was nothing, but I might as well have been throwing it in the toilet. Literally just went to interest. Okay? What if I'd actually had that money to invest? Like do something nice for my family. So flip that paper over for a second. Okay? So we're going to take the money that I spent just on interest. Okay? So that's $62,976. And we're going to see, what if I had just put it in a regular old savings account? Okay? And see how much better off I would have been. So, for starters, A is what we're trying to figure out, like the amount I'll have left over. P for the principal is going to be that $62,000. So, we're going to pretend that I made better decisions. And I actually put that money in a savings account instead of just throwing it down the toilet, basically, which is what I did. Okay? So, the principal, the amount I'm going to put in my savings account, is $62,000, what I spent on interest. Now, of course, I'm sorry. A means the amount I'm going to have at the end. So what I'll have at the end. So how much money I'll have at the end, the amount. Okay, R for interest rate. Now, they charged me about 7% interest. But of course, now, when you deposit your money in a savings account, the bank pays you interest back too. But do you think they're going to give me as much interest as they charge me? Nope. Okay. Average is around like 2%. Okay. Now, there are savings accounts that do give you more than that. Okay. But we're going to go on the low end so that you can kind of see like what's the least I probably could have gotten. Okay. N, again, stands for the number of years that they compound. In other words, the number of times a year they add interest. They added interest every dang day. Do you know how many times a year they usually add interest when they're paying you money? Most of the time, it's only once. Yep. So the number of times that they compound it is 1. When they're charging me money, they compound it daily. Frequently, when you're doing a savings account, though, where they're paying you, they only do it once a year. Ain't that nice? Okay? And the amount of time, let's say that I invested it for 10 years instead of paying it back for 10 years. So you guys do what you think you need to do. On that, fill out where you think the numbers go. Fill out where you think the numbers belong. Okay, bye. Okay, so you put the numbers where you think they belong based on the example that we just did. So you've got your principal, you've got your rate, you've got your number of times it compounds. Hmm? If it's in your Google Drive, you can share it with me if you want. I bet we'll find it. Don't worry, I wouldn't get stressed about it yet. I'll bet it's there. If not, I understand.
It was like the last page.
Oh, okay. And, yeah, we'll get it done.
Figured it out.
No. All right, I'll get you. So, what are we going to sub where? So, what am I going to put in for the principal?
62,000.
Okay, so my P in my formula right here, I'm going to substitute in there $62,976.06. The amount I wish I'd been paying to the, my savings account instead of to the bank. Okay, 1 plus, what am I going to put in for the interest rate? 0.02, because that's 2% as a decimal. How many times a year? What's the number of times once? They're shady. They only give it to me once. And then N times T. So the number of times they compound it times the number of years. They only compound it once a year. And how many years am I saving? 10. So 1 times 10 means my exponent is going to be a 10. So what am I going to put in my calculator first? The parentheses. So 1 plus 0.02 divided by 1. Make sure you hit enter in between each step. Excuse. What am I excusing, Aunt Sally means? E for exponent. So I'm going to raise it to what power? 10. If yours just looks like the little arrow, that's cool. It might not look like an exponent. And my last step is to do what? Multiply. Yep, because that 62,000 is just sitting there next to the parentheses. So that means I'm going to multiply. So 62,976.06. So at the end of 10 years, I would have had close to $80,000. You know how many vacations I could take my kids on, no second job I'd have to have if I had that $80,000 instead of paying all that back to the man. Okay, so what's the moral of this story again? Okay, so let me ask you guys a question real quick. It says it's compounded monthly. Okay, how many months are in a year? 12. Okay, so pay attention to how many times it tells you it's compounded. If it says monthly, that means that they compound it every single month. So your number of times it compounds would be 12. Sometimes they use the word quarterly. How many quarters are there in a dollar? So if it's compounded quarterly, how many times is it going to be compounded? 4. Okay, so pay attention to that wording. All right, what's the matter, baby?